previous slides. What we have done basically, first we have demonstrated that how it has to be used. We have used those markers earlier, SSR based markers. These results I'm saying, what I'm showing here, it's here we use SSR marker. Now we are using SNP marker. But these are in final year of trial. You can see some of the lines performing yield also. And there is one issue I will, one important thing here. Earlier foliar disease, whenever you get such lines, they were long duration. But here we have been able to combine the short duration and foliar disease resistance together. That is the beautiful work that have been done. And then markers have helped in making selection of those regions. So that is wonderful. Now coming to the high oleic, we have used those markers, and in India we did not have actually high oleic source. So this is the genotype Sun oleic, that is from US, and we use that one, and that is a runner type. So basically we brought in Spanish bunch type that we grow in India here. What happened to those? What you have seen, two of the lines basically 15803, and you can see these are being identified and these are being released in India for cultivation. We have shared to our African partners as well, and we are hopeful that some varieties will be released there as well. Now what we have done also, we have combined this rust, LLS and high oleic, and that is also we have done in some of the lines, high yielding lines. Those are popular varieties, so those will be going to ECRIP trials in India for release. Okay, it's not only that ICRISAT uses those markers. You can see here like the one examples we have generated in green shaded one, that at ICRISAT, but at the same time you see at least US Dharwad and ICR DGR Junagadh, they are using these markers for developing product. That means when we work, basically we work with them. Even the high oleic we breed here, that is being released from ICR DGR. So we work with this national partner. We encourage them to use these markers in your breeding program. They should have independent program, and whatever material we develop, we share with them, and they can test and release it. Sorry. You might have seen a presentation from our Prime Minister Modi Saab, and then he has dedicated some 17 lines, I think, to the nation on the foundation day of FAO. And two of the lines actually in 17, those are groundnut varieties, these 4 and 5. So basically this is a new era of high oleic varieties, and really I am really happy because this trait was not there in India at all, and all the international industry, they wanted high oleic products so that raw material is available in India. And really we were working with, even funding we received from Mars Wrigley, that is a chocolate basically company, you can say that, as a support. So they wanted raw material actually in India, and that is how we developed, and this is now available. So we have two advantages here. The quality of Girnar 4 or 5 is equivalent to olive oil, which is around some 800 to 1000 rupees liter, and this groundnut oil is just now, there is no yield reduction. So basically it will come around 100 or 100 to 20 rupees per liter. This is one advantage, that the Indian consumers will have high quality cooking oil. Now the second one, high oleic importance. If you have storage, right, all the products you basically you make, so you have to store it. So storage you can have long shelf life it has. So if it is a high oleic groundnut you are using in your products, in place of 15 days, even you can keep it for 2 months. So that is the like beneficiary for industry as well. So you see health, industry, both are happy. So that is like a win-win situation in all the aspects. And what we see from here, maybe next 10 years, I think from zero high oleic varieties, we will be seeing in next 10 years all the varieties we grow in India will be high oleic. So this trait will be like must have trait, because it's a win-win situation. Nothing we are losing in that one. So that we see. This is a picture from this is from Africa, and we are seeing some of the lines also will be released in Africa as well. So these are under evaluation. Okay, the another approach is genomic selection. I will not go in detail, but because this is very complex, and just in simple way I want to say that making prediction, it's very difficult, and it can be more precise as much good phenotyping data you have, what kind of training population you make. So you can read out some of the papers here. Only what I mean to say here, most of the traits are affected by environment. And really the models we should use those models only where the model can take care of genotype into environment interaction. Otherwise, the prediction will be not of much use for the complex traits in the breeding program. We have just published this paper in August this year, and what we have done basically, we tried to see to compare the models, four models basically. The one model, main effect model, that was not having genotype into environment interaction. What we have seen basically that the last two models, informed interaction model and naive and informed interaction model, they have performed better. That means, suppose if you have 100 genotypes, parental lines, if you have data on 80 also, it can predict for rest of the 20. If you have 7 locations for the breeding program, if you have phenotyping data only for 6 breeding programs, it can predict for the rest of the breeding program. What I mean to say basically, these models are really serving good, and what we are trying from next year onwards, we are going to use these models to initiate the breeding program and then basically see how these work. Until unless now what we have seen, most of the results coming successful results from rice, from maize and wheat. So let's see how it works in groundnut. Okay, the one what we are talking about is actually one part strategy. That means you use elite lines, cross them, and then do GS models, and then you select. Here, this is a two part. That means it suggests that through GS, you can do continuous improvement of your founder parents as well. That means you use those elite lines. Whenever you get better lines in your breeding program, then the founder parents, you include them as a founder parent. Okay, that means you are making the founder parents dynamic. So this is two-part strategy, and that we are trying to implement. We have one project with the Department of Biotechnology, and also we are collaborating with John Hickey, who is in the Roslin Institute, University of Edinburgh in UK, who is basically have demonstrated how four-part strategy is working. So we are working on four-part as well. Although he has shifted now to company, but still we are continuing that work on those aspects. What is that four-part? Basically, I have not put here that slide, but that means there you can use even the wild relatives. So that is the strategy. Okay, here this is the what you see initial training population. So this is I'm telling for groundnut where we are, and then testing GS models, panels, and then what we are doing actually selection. And then once we will do selection, we will go for multi-location trials. And as I mentioned, the best lines we will get here in multi-location trials, we will send them, include them in our founder parents. That means in training population. So making it dynamic. And then the good ones, of course, it will go for nomination and release. So now another concept. Earlier we were using SNPs for selection. New concept is haplotype based breeding. So basically you cannot get always that that SNP is there, only this you select this one is SNP. You need to come across basically the haplotype concept. You have seen basically the very good paper from Bevan et al. In Nature 2017. And here you can see that if you combine different haplotypes, then you can get basically a better phenotype. The right side, you see that example generated in present P crop from our group, and they are trying to basically identifying the already identified those haplotypes and trying to bring together, and that is what it's a haplotype based breeding, because the genotyping may be in different way as not the SNP we do simply. So basically detection, of course, for superior haplotypes you need high quality and high depth sequencing data that we will talk later. In groundnut also we initiated, and we have sequenced 300 genotypes from globe. That is actually the representing the global diversity, and the objective is same. We have used phenotyping data on that, and we will be trying to identify those haplotypes for important traits which we have not been able to develop so far in groundnut. So although I have some preliminary results, but I am not presenting here to make it short, but this is the objective. And I think every crop now from SNP based there also will be haplotype based breeding that is coming up, that will be optimized in coming years. So this is the new one. You might have heard about genome editing. Yes, if you have known function genes, yes, you can do genome editing. Nowadays, protocols are being optimized that you can do multiple edits in one go. But this is also now opening new areas. And yes, you can, duration is short. Again, technology point of view, I will not go in detail. I will talk applications. If we have known genes more and more, we can edit those without making any background changes. That means if a variety is very popular and you have genes for 5 traits, you can change it. Variety will remain same, and the 4 traits will be value added basically. So that is the concept, and it's less time. So that is the good thing from genome editing. Of course, it is a very less time, just 4 to 6 years you can release your material in place of 8 to 10 years. And this is very, very important. For higher genetic gain, varietal replacement should be faster, higher. We need not to grow 10 years, 20 years, 20 years old varieties. And that we can see like in India, even like we see JL24 and TMV2, is 30, 40 years, many years old varieties, still farmers are growing. So that limits actually the productivity. Okay, there are many examples. Again, I will skip this one. Now I want to discuss this one. This is promotion of alleles by genome editing. What it means basically, right now, what the researchers are doing, they are editing the genes which have larger impact or larger effect on the phenotype. Here, what it does, even a smaller effect, genes is those functional genetic variants basically, if it has less effect also, if you can edit all those base pairs basically, so say 100 edits, then definitely that process is called page. So what it means basically, you can integrate with genomic selection. That means you can perform genomic selection and you can edit some of these alleles and then club. So you can see this is a very good paper from Genetic Selection Evolution if someone wants to read it in detail, because it's a too technical to explain here. In summary, I will say that if you club with genomic selection, the gain, it is very high. It's a really dynamic basically. You can see you can gain genetic gain, you can really in less time you can make higher genetic gain. So that is the objective here. Rapid generation advancement, and maybe in speed breeding you might have heard. In many crops it is optimized. I am not talking about other crops. Yes, you have, if you are working in wheat, barley, chickpea, rice, canola, of course you can go from 2 3 generation to 6 generations or 4 generations. What as far as groundnut is concerned, there is one, I will skip this. So basically, okay, maybe better. So basically what you can do, this varietal development process you can reduce through speed breeding, right? So here you can reduce. So basically what we want actually, the breeding process, we want to compress it so that the improved variety can be developed faster, right? We can use those approaches where you can change the multiple genomic locations and traits you can modify. So that should be the approach. In groundnut, what we are seeing, normal glasshouse conditions, you can see from University of Southern Queensland, they have been able to do 3.5 generation for a mid-duration variety in single year. At ICRISAT, we have reached to the stage, basically you can say it's the same thing, 3.5 generation in a single year. But now we are enhancing the facility further. That we can get even 4 5 generations per year. So again, this is a very good resource you can use for different applications. Suppose if you are developing a recombinant in midlines from F2 to F4, if you can get 4 generations in a year, you can develop a real population in just 2 years in place of 4 years. So that is the time gain you are. And in breeding also, if you don't want to make any selection between F2 to F6, you can go ahead for RGA and then you can advance the generations, and then you can make selections at later stage. Although University of Queensland, they are optimizing phenotyping for some traits in the seedlings while even RGA is going on. So if it is feasible, it's on the crop if you can do it. Again, although groundnut has advantage of being having a big seed, because seed rate is very high, because you need more seed for planting in farmers field. So that is a challenge. If it is a smaller seed, you need just kgs of seed, that's it. But this is not the case in groundnut because seed is big. But if it is big, we have also one advantage what we have optimized, that suppose if you have 1,000 lines to grow in the field, and we want to do marker state selection, or we want to check QC, we are not planting them in the field. What we are doing now, we are chipping them, and what you can see the small slices here, we send for genotyping. In 15 days, we get data, and then based on that data, genotyping data, we take a call that out of 1,000 lines, we will grow only 500 lines. So basically, we are imposing that selection before planting itself. So also saving time and also resources. And really, it's a good impact, because if you see that how selection we are doing, so we ourselves, we are how improvising. So far we have been doing, we isolate DNA and then genotype it. Also, we were sending sometimes isolating DNA and then sending DNA to some service provider for genotyping. Then we started with Intertech, not DNA isolation, just leaf punching. We are sending just leaf punched those samples and then genotyping. Then come up with seed chipping. That means you need not even grow plant. You just from the seeds, you can chip, you do, and once you are satisfied, then you can use. So basically, you are reducing, you can see the time from 45 to just 15 days, and then dollar value, of course, the money and resources you are using less. So we are making it routine, and wherever it is applicable to reduce cost and resources. So this is the now modernization of breeding programs and processes we are proceeding it. Whatever genomics we do, I will not go detail for phenotyping because I don't have expertise on that. But all our genomics studies, they are relying on the phenotyping. Genotyping, sequencing, not an issue. Still, we are struggling for phenotyping for many traits in each of these crops. We don't have a protocol, reproducible protocol, reliable protocol for phenotyping those traits. So here what I mean to say, you have four pillars and of genetic gain, and sorry, and first two pillar, if you see, size of breeding program and faster breeding cycles, all those things. So basically you can see phenotyping is very key role. You can see it's very important, very important role. These are the like different kinds of phenotyping protocols you can assess, like from satellites to you have high throughput mobiles, aerial, even underground also you have some of these systems. What I mean to say, as much good as the phenotyping data, as much will be the genomics studies. If you have very good robust protocol for phenotyping in your breeding program, you can avoid phenotyping and using markers. So markers will be more reliable if the phenotyping is good during the trait mapping genomics study. So this is very clear. If you don't have good phenotyping data, you don't have good protocol, I am suggesting please don't waste your time, because the markers you identify will not work at all. Because it's an association. You put any kind of genetic markers data, you get some association. So if phenotyping data is not robust, not reliable, not consistent, then definitely you are not going, the results is not going to be work in your breeding program. That is why many of the scientists, they just leave up to there and then publication and that's okay, I washed off my hands and then see, I have isolated, now you people use it. So that is the approach we should not have. Please make sure that whatever you do, your technology reaches. Again, decision support tools, I will not take much time, but I will say we are generating high throughput data, really big data, and those should be stored well. There is one GOBI, that is a global community, that is platform, Genomic Open Breeding Informatics Initiative. You can submit databases and it can provide linking. There are also some of the tools that they link. You can do some of the analytical tools as well here. You can use, these are all free in access, and you can use it. So this is the beauty. Again, it's an integration. Your data should be integrated well. Otherwise, how the information you have, you can use in your decision making. So again, whatever you do, genomics, phenomics, and everything, it should be linked and retrievable so that you can make good decisions. Okay, if you see summary how groundnut has come a long way, so you can see like basically 2010, if I say, and now from having just say hundreds of thousands of SSR markers, now 2-3 high quality genomes, and then deployed genomes, all the genotyping assays, everything is available. So this is like 10 years have been very good. What I mean to say here, now groundnut community is as much equipped as rice and wheat, and there is no basically now excuses for the groundnut breeders that they are away from accessing the technology as the wheat, rice, and soybean breeders are accessing it. So that I mean to say here. So we are on the same page, and then really we can make a good progress. What I would say here, genomic resources, no more issue. It's very cost effective. It's very reliable, and very less time you can get it. High throughput phenotyping data, again, it's a really, we have not been able to solve it. Really, we need good phenotyping protocols, consistent, stable, so that we can make good progress. Integration of next generation technologies, yes, of course. As soon it gets, it should be optimized and it should be used. And that's what as a CG center is our role. Basically, new technology, we just work with in advanced institutes and make sure that it is optimized and used by our national partners. International, national, and state government, private agencies, you can see most of the funding agencies, they are diverting their money for development, actually. But until unless you have research component build up, in long term, you are losing many things. So you cannot divert your attention from research to completely development, because development can be seen impact very fast, and from research it comes late. But this is a pipeline. If you break it, then this is going to be problem. So that is my message, basically, to the our group today here. And thank you. And then again, thanks, Dr. Majumdar and Soma. Really, it's wonderful. I would love to have questions for that.
Yes, sir. We have few questions. I'm just giving you in the chat box.
Okay.
This one, the first. I give you 4 and 5 questions because we need also time for the interview.